When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offence at me." As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has risen greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he."
I think my first reaction on hearing this passage is, first of all, to feel some real sympathy with John the Baptist, who's in prison for speaking his mind, and then the wonderful reassurance that comes from Jesus. Go and tell John, this is what's happening.
Yes.
You haven't been wrong.
Right.
You know, you're on track, and yet he's paid quite a cost, hasn't he?
Yes, well, John paid the cost of daring to criticise the rulers of the time for their corrupt lifestyle. But what this passage is doing is confirming that Jesus is in fact the Messiah that John was predicting.
Was proclaiming.
Yeah.
Which of course we heard about last week when we talked about the earlier passage from
That's
from Matthew
right.
last week.
But you can see here that when John proclaimed the kingdom, he was talking this message of judgment, of sort of clearing the rubbish out of the way. And what comes through is this amazing person, Jesus, full of life, who is healing and raising up and all these things that are mentioned in the passage. And you don't get that in John. He's the critic, the conscience.
Right. So it's with there's a much more positive message with Jesus, isn't there? The wholeness is coming through.
This is the kingdom.
This is the kingdom.
When people actually get healed and raised up and given new life.
And yet for me that raises a problem, because there are many people who aren't healed, who don't feel that fullness. And certainly I have difficulty with certain church groups who preach what sort of a wealth and wholeness gospel, which seems to be quite shallow and superficial and doesn't take seriously the very real problems that people have to live with. And you and I both work with people like that constantly. We have people coming our way. How does that work?
Well,
because a lot of people will
yes.
I think, throw over their faith.
Yes.
If they have a crisis, if their faith is based on the sort of frothy,
right,
and then there's a crisis, or their prayers aren't answered as they want them to be.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of people in our so-called secular society who've rejected this whole idea that people can be healed of whatever is afflicting them, and that what they have to do is just be stoical and grin and bear it, really. And if it means they're going to die, well, it means they're going to die, and they need family support and so on. But I had a conversation with a remarkable prophetic woman yesterday afternoon, who told me that she's got invasive cancer of the lungs, but she's totally unstoppable. She's raising money for a very good cause, and she goes around the country in a totally selfless way, doing that to the best of her ability, and she knows that one day she'll drop dead, but that doesn't stop her for one single second. And this is a person of faith who's totally realistic, but has got a mission.
That's quite a struggle though, to hold that. to hold on to that faith,
Yes.
even when it seems to be turning to custard.
It is. It's very, very hard.
To see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Do you think that part of the healing thing, perhaps we don't give enough credence to the incredible advances in medical healing, in scientific healing, and we're looking for the miracle. In fact, the second part of it is Jesus saying, well, what did you go out to see?
Right.
You know, what are your expectations?
Yeah.
Are you so blinded by your expectations that perhaps you can't see what's happening under your very eyes?
Under your very eyes. Yes, well, the whole thing of palliative care has made huge strides in my lifetime, and it was started by Cicely Saunders, who set up hospices for the dying, and this sort of catalysed this whole process of, so far as possible, taking people's pain away for them, even if they're terminally ill, and making the environment sort of maximally supportive, so that this whole thing of dying with dignity that people talk about now is actually real and happens. It's not just a theory.
And perhaps, again, we're not far off Christmas now. In our prayers and our thoughts at Christmas time, we should be remembering people who will be facing their last Christmas.
Absolutely.
And their families, and also those who work with them in the hospice and so on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's bringing the gospel into their midst.
Into the midst,
And that's
yes.
a good way to end.
Right, I think it probably is.